Good morning, tape class. It is Monday, August 24th. Happy Monday. I hope all is well. Everyone's safe, doing good. This week, what we're going to do is we're going to go into elements of a story. Now, I know a lot of this probably going to seem like review, but for all you M test takers, which is the majority of you, this is going to be on your tape test, so we need to go over it, review it. This week we'll do a little IXL, obviously play a Kahoot, maybe do a couple worksheets, see how it goes. Let me know how you're doing. I'm on Google Meet every day. Love to see you, talk to you, and let me know you watch these videos. If they're helpful, if they're not helpful, put a message on the YouTube page that you see. So I'd love to know if these help as we move forward through this tape stuff. So as we start, we're going to do elements of a story. So when we're looking at elements, what are we looking at? Setting, plot, characters, conflict, theme, problem, solution. We're going to go through these in the next 13 minutes or so. Just kind of review it. I think a lot of you already know this, but it's going to be a good review, and it's going to be good, something good to know for your tape test. All right, so let's just jump right into it. All right, setting. What is a setting? It's the where and when of the story. It's the time and place during which the story takes place. So the setting right now is I'm at my home writing a video. That would be a setting. Your setting would be if you're in a story where you are, where it's taking place, right? It can be any of these details where the action occurs: time of day, time of year, time in history, location, clothing, dialects, weather, etc., etc. It's pretty much where the story takes place, okay? So, a good author includes descriptions of the setting used in the following sentences. So, what you see, what you smell, are you in nature? Are you outside in the woods? You smell the wood burning. Do you smell the trees? What do you taste? Are you in a restaurant? What's the taste of the food? What's the feel? What's the atmosphere? Anything that tells you where you are at. What is the functions? To create a mood or atmosphere, to show a reader a different way of life, to make the action seem more real, to be the struggle or conflict, or to symbolize an idea. It's essentially telling us, letting us know where we're at. Pretty straightforward, right? Alright, let's go into mood. The mood is the feeling that the author tries to convey throughout the story, the atmosphere or emotional condition created by the piece within the setting. Does the author want the reader to be frightened or sad, or does the story make the reader laugh and think happy thoughts? So to figure out the mood, we examine how you feel while reading the story. Alright, so how do you feel? Is there a crazed killer coming after you? Is he frightened? Is he sad? Did someone just lose a loved one? Are we laughing? You know, these are the mood. It's how we feel. Alright, the plot. This is very important. This is probably one of the most important things. It's the organized pattern or sequence of events that make up a story. It's a literary element that describes the structure of stories. It shows the arrangement of events and actions within a story. Alright, understanding how the story took place. What is the plot? How did it start? What happened? Where did we get to? Alright. So here are some parts of a plot. We're not going to memorize these word for word, but we're going to need to know what they are. Alright, the exposition. We're introducing the character, setting, and conflict, and the problem are introduced. Alright, so what's happening? Alright, what's the build-up? What is the introduction? How are we meeting the characters? What are we getting to know about them? The rising action, events that occur as a result of the central conflict. Alright, so what's the problem? And what happens? So the rising action. The climax, the highest point of interest in the story, the most important part of the story. You will see some questions on your tape test asking you about climax. Then the falling action. Get my face out of there so you can see that. The tension eases. Events show the result of how the main character begins to resolve the conflict, and the resolution. Loose ends are tied up and the conflict is solved. So, if we look at this in a diagram, 1, the exposition. what's happening. Kind of just the build-up of the story, the introduction. 2, the rising action, what's happening, right? What is, the build-up? The build-up, the problem, it's introducing itself, and then the climax, what's happening at the most important part of the story. The falling action, how we're resolving the issue, how the tensions eases, how the main character resolves the conflict, and then the resolution. So think about it as a movie, right? We're introducing, or even a story. We're introducing what's happening, it's rising, and all of a sudden the most important part of the story happens. Tension eases, and then we get some resolution, all right? So the exposition, this usually occurs at the beginning of a short story. Characters are introduced. We also learn about the setting of the story. Most importantly, we are introduced to the main conflict or the problem. So we need to understand what the main problem is. The rising action, the part of the story begins to develop the conflict. A building of interest or suspense occurs and leads to the climax. All right, so think about the build-up. We see it happening. What's going to happen? Things are being introduced. The character, things are happening to them. The setting, people are going places. Things are happening. And then the climax, the turning point. So when we think about the turning point, we think about the climax. The main character comes face to face with the conflict, all right? This is the most important part of the story. This is the part of the story you don't want to miss. The character is going to change in some way, and it's the most intense moment of your story. The falling action, the action that follows the climax and leads to resolution. All right, so think about something major happens. What's the fallout from that happening? That's when we start getting closer to the end, and the resolution, all loose ends are tied up. Either the character defeats the problem, learns to live with the problem, or defeats the character. Alright, so if we put it all together, exposition and rising action is beginning, climax is middle, falling, resolution is the end of a story. And then if we look at the diagram some more, this is kind of reiterating what we just talked about. Introduction, developing action, most important part, the climax, falling action, resolution. All right, so that is our plot. It's very important that you understand the plot and how that comes to be. All right, now it's the characters. We all know what the characters are: peoples, animals, and imagery creatures who take part in the action of the story. We have central characters, or the main characters, and the most important characters in literary works. Think about a book you've just read. Who are the most important characters in that story? And then the minor, less important characters. They're not centered around them, but they help carry out an action in the story. They're important to the story, but they're not. The story is not about these characters or these events, but they play a part. Alright, protagonist and antagonist. Protagonist is the main character involved in the main conflict, and the antagonist is the force or opposition of the protagonist, usually another character, but can be nature, society, and internal force. Alright, so we think about protagonist, the most important person, the main character, who is the protagonist in the last story you've read. And then the antagonist, the person against. Anti-antagonist, against. For, against. Okay? Think about it like that. Dynamic character, static character, we look at these a little less, but just to go over them briefly, dynamic character is one who undergoes changes as the plots unfold. Changes occur because of the character's actions and experiences. They're internal and may be good or bad. Static is one who remains the same throughout the story. Character traits. Oh yes, we did this a while back, right? We talked about character traits. I don't think we need to reiterate. A character trait is just what makes up a character. What they look like, how they act, what they see. Direct characterization. We talked about this with character traits, right? The writer tells exactly what the personality is like. Versus indirect is the writer uses 5 different methods: speech, thoughts, effect, actions, and looks. Does anybody remember this when we went over character traits? Don't think we need to go over it again, as we run out of time and we want to go over a few other things. All right, conflict or problem. What is the dramatic struggle between two forces in the story? Without conflict, there's no plot. Every story has a conflict or something that needs to be resolved, right? It's a problem that must be solved, an issue between the protagonist, main character, and the antagonist, the person pushing against them. It forms the basis of the plots. Internal, external, right? External means outside, internal, inside. Is it an internal struggle with the main character coming from within, or an external struggle coming from somebody outside, another person, group, animal, etc.? Alright. Some external conflicts, character versus character, character versus nature, versus society versus fate, internal, character versus self. Alright, so we talked about all of these a little bit with character traits. Theme. Again, this is a little bit of a review. What is the theme, the central message? We did a lesson on theme. Again, this is all kind of tying into it, what we've gone over. So the theme, again, is the central life message we learned. Alright, so how we find theme. No need to go through this again, because we've done this. It's the moral lesson that we learn from a story that we read. Alright, what is the theme? What is it teaching us? Alright, some techniques used in the story. Suspense, foreshadowing, flashback, symbolism, personification, surprise endings. Alright, that is my PowerPoint. Let's talk about these real quick. Suspense, the excitement, foreshadowing, a hint or clue what will happen. A flashback interrupts the normal sequence. Symbolism, specific objects to represent ideas. Personification, when you give a thing, idea, or animal do something only humans do. Non-human qualities to human people. And a surprise ending, the conclusion the reader does not expect. Alright, so this is story elements in a nutshell. What we're going to really focus on for us in this week is setting, plot, characters, and conflict. I wouldn't necessarily get into theme too much, but because we've talked about it and we know what theme is. But these are the things we need to know. Alright, so let's go to iExcel. Alright, so we're going to be in the M test. And as we see, identifying story elements. Alright, so when we go in and practice iExcel this week, which we all will hopefully do, we're going to identify story elements. Alright, so for example, what is the story setting? Where does it take place? The village of Bandar was known to be a hard place. Bitter cold. She loved her homeland, she loved the wind, she loved the gray sky, most of all she loved the ancient trees. Trees were magic. One had to wait for autumn when the leaves trained, alright, to release the tree's magic. Alright, so if we're looking at the word magic, right, it's probably not a real place. So we're most likely going to a fantasy world. Took just 10 seconds to figure that out. Alright, just using context clues. Who's the main character? Alright, 11-year-old Skylar loved her homeland. She loved it, alright? So, Sayla. Skylar, did I say Skylar? It says it right there who our main character is. It talks about her. She rolled her eyes. Everything is about Sayla, right? She's the main character. She's the protagonist. Okay? She's not too bad. Alright, we're going to have to read through this to understand the plot and order of events. So this is what we're looking at, what we just talked about. Exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Alright? So, for the sake of time, I got a minute left. We're just going to kind of, she collects trees. So I'm just guessing because I didn't read through it, but you will read through this and get your answers. So that's not correct. But we're just doing this to show you, okay? What's the main problem? What's the main conflict? Life is hard. No one knows how to find the trees. Without reading through it, she cannot find any trees. She thinks that I'm going to take a stab here. Okay. So, problem, solution. What's the conflict and what's the resolution? See, this is how all of our story elements play into what we need to know for our tape test. Alright, we're out of time. I hope this was helpful when it came to understanding briefly what story elements are. Please let me know how the video is helpful or not helpful for you this week. I hope everyone has a great week. I'll be here all week to be of assistance. Please let me know what I can do to make your life easier for this class. Have a great day.